There are many different types of plants within the Plants vs Zombies franchise, including aquatic plants. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you every single aquatic plant from the first Plants vs Zombies game all the way up to the newest ones, starting off with Plants vs Zombies 1. The first aquatic plant introduced into Plants vs Zombies 1 is the lily pad. This plant is basically necessary for both the pool world and the fog world, as well as the only plant that can place non-aquatic plants in the water. And well, because of that, it makes it one of the most useful plants in the entire game, as well. It makes it so that you could place any plant on the water, which is really good. The next aquatic plant is the tangle kelp that'll instantly kill one zombie by dragging it underwater. And while it has a pretty fast recharge time, and compared to some of the other semi-insta plants and insta plants in the game, it's really not that good. As well, the fact that it could only be placed in the water really limits the amount of zombies that it could get, and since it instantly kills the first zombie that hits it, if something like a basic zombie runs into it before a more powerful zombie, it'll basically completely waste the tangle kelp. So compared to some other plants in the game, it's really not that good. And next we have the sea shroom, which is literally the exact same thing as the puff shroom, except that it could be placed in the water. And well, that's literally it. Everything about it is basically exactly the same as the puff shroom, besides the fact that it can be placed in the water, it can't be placed on land. And well, the final aquatic plant in Plants vs Zombies 1 is the cattail, which is an upgraded version of the lily pad. And while this is one of the most powerful plants in the game, as well, it could shoot literally anywhere on the lawn, as well as not just limited to 1 or 2 lanes. So just because of that, it's actually a really powerful plant. And moving on to the next game, we have Plants vs Zombies Endless Edition. Now, there is actually a whole underwater world in Plants vs Zombies Endless Edition, so there is an entire new world with a bunch of brand new plants that could only be placed underwater. The first one of these plants were the oxygen algae, which provided oxygen for non-underwater plants to be placed down underwater. As well, in a 3x3 area around the oxygen algae, you'll be able to place any plant that normally wouldn't be able to be placed underwater, and it'll keep them alive. So because of that, it's probably the most important plant in the entire world, as well without it, you literally wouldn't be able to place any other plants outside of this world on the lawn. Now next we have the sea star fruit, which is actually an insta plant, as well when you place it down, it rolls down the lane, dealing immense damage to every single zombie in that lane. Additionally, certain zombies that have a lot of armor will actually be able to be temporarily stunned by the sea star fruit, so they're easier to attack. Now next we have the bramble seagrass, which is a pretty simple plant, as well as simply just stuns a few different zombies when they walk onto his tile. And while he'll stun these zombies for a pretty good amount of time, and you want to place him at the beginning of the lawn so that the other plants behind him could attack the zombies while they're stunned. Now next we have the water gun grass, which is pretty similar to the puff shroom, except that it can be placed underwater as well as very close range. And while he deals very similar damage to the puff shroom, however, his range is 1 tile further than the normal puff shroom, but besides that, it's a very similar plant. Now next we have the electric anemone, which is actually very similar to the gloom shroom, and it's the only premium plant that can be placed underwater. And while it deals damage in a 3x3 area around it, just like the gloom shroom, though it also deals extra electric damage, so it's sort of like a buff version of the normal gloom shroom. And we're moving on to Plants vs Zombies 2, starting off with the guacadile. Now the guacadile is able to be placed on land and water, so it's not exclusively an aquatic plant. Very similar to basically every single other aquatic plant in this game, it can be both placed on land and water. And while it simply just shoots projectiles at the zombie, and when a zombie runs into the guacadile, it'll start going down the lawn just like a lawnmower, though it doesn't do as much damage as the lawnmower, as well it just deals a couple hundred damage to the zombies that could kill some of them. Now next we have the sea flora, which is able to shoot piercing bubbles at the zombies. And while it'll normally shoot only 1 bubble down a singular lane, though when placed on water is actually able to shoot down 3 separate lanes, meaning that you actually want to place this plant on water, as well as actually heavily benefited. Now next we have the electric peel, which is able to spawn down a peel that slithers down the lane and attacks the zombies, then returns back. And when placed on water, just like the sea flora, it'll deal extra damage to the zombies. And well, same thing with the next plant being the guard shroom, as well once again, it's normally placed on land, though it could also be placed on water, and when placed on water, it's a lot better. And while the guard shroom actually spawns mini guard shrooms to actually be able to attack the zombies, which is really cool. Now next we have the aquavine, which can support both water plants and on land plants, and mattering on what type of plant is actually over, its abilities will actually change. As well, if it's on a water plant, it'll deal slightly more damage than it normally would on a land plant. And moving on to the newest aquatic plant in Plants vs Zombies 2, we have the sea shooter. And well, it's very similar to the 3-peater, except that it shoots in slightly different directions, and it could also be placed on water and land. Though interestingly, when placed on land, a puddle of water spawns under it, which is really strange, and I don't really know why they made it do that. As well, if you have to place a puddle of water under a plant, it'll most likely just be better as exclusively being an aquatic plant instead of both being a land plant and an aquatic plant, so it's pretty strange. But yeah, it's definitely a really strange looking pea shooter variant, and it's one of the weirdest plants that we've gotten recently. Now moving on to Plants vs Zombies 2 China, starting off with the Lotus Pod. The Lotus Pod is a pretty simple plant, though it is very expensive for what it does, as well it costs 200 sun. And what all this plant does is that it fires seeds at the zombies, and he's stronger when on water, though for 200 sun is really not worth it. As well, there's a lot more powerful plants in the game that cost very similar amounts of sun, for example the cattail. As well, the cattail actually returns in this game, and well, it can be placed on both land and water. And well, just like the first game, it attacks anywhere on the lawn, and it also attacks way faster than the first game as well, and deals a lot more damage. And when given plant food, he can actually spawn in a laser that will laser down the zombies, dealing an insane amount of damage. And moving on to the next plant, we have the Narcissus shooter, which is able to shoot big bubbles at the zombies that are able to take away armor and imps. As well, it could take away armor from zombies such as buckets and also night helmets, and it could also take away imps when they're just walking on the lawn, which is a pretty interesting ability, though once again, just like the Lotus Pod, is sort of overpriced, as well it costs 300 sun. Though it is pretty powerful, as well it can literally take imps away and get rid of armor, so for what it does, is actually pretty good. Now next we have the Bubble Cholo, which is able to launch bubbles at the zombies that have different effects that deal slightly more damage and slightly less damage to each other, and can get rid of armor instantly. So mattering on which bubble hits the zombie, it could actually be either really good or somewhat good. Meaning that in some cases this play could actually be really good. And moving on to the new underwater world, starting off with the oxygen algae, which is the exact same as has been in the past 2 games. And well, in this world they also brought back the sea shroom and the sea shooter, but they also brought 3 new plants, with the first one being the kelp guard. Now when you place down the kelp guard, you actually place down 2 of them at the exact same time, as all their arms combine together, creating a wall. And while this plant can stop the ocean currents from moving your ship around, and it could also block the zombies, acting as a giant wall. And while it has a really good amount of health, and it's very similar to the Infinite from the Far Future world, when you give it plant food it creates a giant wall just like the kelp guard. And well, next we have the Posidonia, which is able to spawn in small sharks that attack the zombies. And while it could only spawn in a couple sharks at the exact same time, meaning that they could only target a couple zombies at a time, though it still is really good. As though the majority of the time when it targets the zombie, it'll most likely kill them. Now next we have the Puffydurus, which is able to get rid of zombies and sea creatures in a 3x3 area. As though it'll put this thing in a 3x3 area that will scare off all the zombies, sort of like the garlic, and it'll also scare off all the sea creatures. And while this will last for a total of 20 seconds until they're able to move back into the area. And while it's a pretty unique plant, as well there's not a lot of other plants in the game that are like it, and it's overall not too good, though it's not too bad either. Now moving on to the next game, we have Plants vs Zombies Online, starting off with the Oxygen Algae. And while this plant works the exact same way as Plants vs Zombies Endless Edition, as well it spawns oxygen in a 3x3 area. And well, interestingly, garlic is for some reason an underwater plant in Plants vs Zombies Online. I don't really understand why it's an underwater plant. It's a very strange decision, but I guess they just decided to make it a bit more unique in this game. Now next we have the Bubble Flower, which is able to shoot giant bubbles at the zombies, which will temporarily stun them and deal a good amount of damage. And well, next we have the Electric Sea Pine, which is able to fire lightning at the zombies and are also able to attack them in a couple different ways using electricity. And while it's pretty weird for an underwater plant to shoot lightning at the zombies, though it is a really powerful plant that deals very heavy damage. And while there's also 4 underwater plants that are exclusive to the RPG mode in this game, being the Mine Fruit, the Sea Anemone, the Litchi, and the Sea Star Fruit. All of these plants are exclusive to the RPG version of Plants vs Zombies Online that's very similar to Plants vs Zombies All-Stars. And while out of all of these, the Sea Star Fruit is definitely the most powerful, though the Mine Fruit's also pretty good as it explodes just like the Cherry Bomb. And while moving on to the next game, we have by far the most aquatic plants being Plants vs Zombies Heroes. And well, there's a total of 29 aquatic plants in this game, with the sting bean, sea shroom, water chestnut, corn dog, marine bean, pearcub, guacadile, smacadamia, bodygourd, grizzly pear, admiral navy bean, lily pad, lima paletterodon, spirus, lightning reed, laser cattail, pearpal, rutabaga, cattail, mayflower, navy bean, leaf blower, snake grad, snapdragon, bird of paradise, jolly holly, brain nana, dark matter dragon fruit, and the great zucchini. And well, this is by far the most aquatic plants out of any other Plants vs. Zombies game in the entire franchise by far. But yeah, comment down below which aquatic plant do you think is the best and which is your favorite, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like, subscribe, and have a great day.